Okay, here's another video that has a lot of info in it, all tied in together in one shot. And it's put on one of these sites where a guy is putting out real Egyptian information, and then the black Afrocentrics jump on and say, "Oh no, it was all this, it was all that." Well, in the videos, it shows you that blacks are looked at as being totally different. They're slaves. They have this depiction of them here. They always have these rings in their ear because they put a ring in the ear of a slave. It's why there's actual earrings. It denotes actual ownership. And there are just many pictures of boats carrying them, and many depictions of the pharaohs going after, killing, warring them, running over them. In fact, here's the Sphinx standing on one right here. And so my response to one of the comments, somebody was saying where Negro came from, the word Negro, and they come from Portugal, and they just know, and they don't, because they apparently haven't studied ancient cultures and studies and or languages. Linguistics would show you that Latin was actually the origin of Spanish and Portuguese, even though they deviated after that point. And so here I'm just going to show my response here down, and this guy tells you I'm gonna give you a brief reference to the term Negro. Is all originated. Negro in Old Portuguese means dark. It doesn't mean black, and da da da, and all these type things. He uses Morano and all these type things to try to refer it. The term nigger comes from Old German neger, which also means Negro, and that's not necessarily true either. An egger is somebody who's running, who runs. And whenever black people were in chattel slavery, that only lasted 7 years, just like white people, all the way through the first part of slavery. They were only in slavery for 7 years and then released. Many blacks attained land through this time and bought other blacks, believe it or not. And whenever they would run, they were somebody who had reneged on the 7 year deal that they were supposed to have done. They took off, and they would chase them down. Schwarzenegger comes from this. So let's look here and look at the reply that I give you of this, or give them and you, and it's for everybody. I'll give you a brief on the term Negro. Portuguese comes from Latin, where the word black is Niger. As in lands like Kemet, black land, or in the many rivers of the world that are blackened and were called Niger by the Spanish and Portuguese explorers. And indeed, there is a Niger River in North Africa, in South America, everywhere that anybody's ever went as explorers. The term Negro came from Latin Niger, but to adopt it to a people, the O was adopted to the end to note people of, or black people, as opposed to black land or other Niger objects, much like Ians, ending on words to note a people of that land, ites and Ians, where you could just put O, as in being of the land. Just like you say o'clock, meaning of the clock. This is another German and or Latin expression. Schwarzen or Schwarz is black in German. Neger is running man, an appellative given to Germans to denote swift runner, or one who runs. And interestingly, we find a famous man with both these in his name, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his name means black man running. Look it up. Do you think he's a black or has black DNA? No, to the contrary, Caucasians are able to use the term black or Niger or whatever to refer to many aspects of the world that aren't going to have to be about Africans, such as soil, or to be dark of heart. Something covered in soot is termed blackened, but doesn't refer to Africans. It refers to colors or darkness. The term moreno is no different, with the appellative morin to denote darker, and O as a people of, a darker people than they, perhaps as referring to the Moors themselves, a darker people than themselves that came to attack. Just as the word coon was developed from the German Kain, and referred to a people that were cannibals and therefore worshipped and followers of Saturn Kronos, known as Kayun to the Levant, or Kiwan to Arabs, and denoted Saturn. the god that ate his children, if you remember Greek and Roman lit. A term given to blacks by the Germans because, just like today, there is cannibalism in Africa. Not a freak out like you've heard of white people do it and they're going to go, oh, no, white. No, 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 no. As a way of life, it's rampant. Look it up. They actually are crazy about eating white people and making potions out of albinos. It's been something since primordial time, since way before recorded time. Nothing different. In fact, cannibalism was rampant around the world in great times of strife and going through winters. Not just located only in Africa. But Saturn and Cronus was known as El in the Levant area, and his son Zeus was known as Baal, like in the Bible. And the Canaanite worship of Baal was the origin of the word cannibalism. El, his father, had a wife, Asherah, and his son Baal. Look up Yahweh and his Asherah, and you will see that before the idols were taken away, Yahweh was a bull god, and he denied his wife and kids. Why blacks relate to him so well, and actually Yahweh is just the Sumerian form of El and Baal. El is the god of the Hebrews, the Elohim. They worship El in a temple. They have winged angels, Gabriel, Ariel, Michael, etc. Their prophets are Daniel, Nathaniel. El-Isha means El is Yah or El is Yahweh. Bealiah means Baal is Yahweh or Baal is Yah. Or Ezekiel. It is El-Amentri that Beth-El means Beth for house, and the name of God is El. As big as an elephant in the Bible. Big as the Tower of Babel. The elders will tell you 2,000 years of El worship. Later by the Hebrews, and we find the truth. 2,000 years later, people, and we find the truth. El, Cronus, had one only begotten son named Eudid. You can find this in St. Cunithon in a lot of the elder Greeks. They tell you that that would be Iesous in Greek. That he sacrificed in a time of trouble, as was the ancient custom, and the land was named for him, Eudea. There was no J until the 1300s. There is a land called Judea before the 1300s. So tell me, where is Judea? Tell me, Iesous, who is Jesus? Did you know that the ancient Phoenician word for Saturn was Israel? It was the star that denoted the warrior of God, and depending on how it went around through the constellations, depended on whether or not they wanted to kill somebody. Oh, snap! There's your Yahweh and there's your Hebrew God right there. Let's look at something here real quick. Let's look at Yahweh and his Asherah, and I will show you this amazing thing that they found in a place called Kinjeret Arjud. But now they found more than that. They found them all over the place. Yahweh, really? Here we go. Yahweh and his Asherah. Let's look at some images. Asherah is a mother goddess. She is the queen of heaven. And she's also the wife of Yahweh. Yes, sure enough. Jehovah de Samaria, Yasu Asherah. Aha! This is Yahweh and his Asherah. Look, there's a hornet, or the wasp. There are the bees and the flies that are flying around him. He is a bull god. He has the bull horns. That image of Baal worship is him before they take the idols away. It's the same thing. He has a son, which he denies, and his wife, which I guess is why black people really relate to this Jewish thing, huh? Because he leaves them and disses the other gods of the El Pantheon, the Elohim. Look, all these inscriptions here, they'll tell you, blessed be by Yurahu, by Yahweh, and by his Asherah. That's what it says on there. It says it right here in this inscription. That is the word Yahweh right there. Yahweh. It goes left to right. Yahweh and his Asherah. And you put your hand on here. Nobody knows what the dip is. Maybe they used to do some kind of blood ritual thing with this. But this is what they used to do with Yahweh and his Asherah. So let's do a couple of other things real quick. Let's show you something. Let's look up Baal worship. And you'll find out that this is what they did. That, sure enough, their sons and their daughters, they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. Cannibalistic worship. They used to worship somebody that looked just like this. This is what your Hebrews used to keep failing in worshiping. What do you think today would think if you saw somebody that did something like this and a guy that looked like this with the horns on him that they worshipped? Be kind of strange, wouldn't it? You'd call it devil worship, wouldn't you? You sure would. Well, let's see what Moses looked like after he met this guy on Sinai. When he comes down from Sinai, believe it or not, Moses has horns. It's written in the Bible. They've tried to change it to beams of light, but Karen is goat horns, and it means nothing but. There's 60 times it means goat horns, and never does it mean light. And all the ancient people, Michelangelo, all these guys, made Moses with horns, because he has horns after meeting this God. He went and met him, and whenever he comes down after meeting him, he has horns. He has tablets, and he has horns. Why would you have horns whenever you meet this God? Because he's a bull god, and he has horns. He asks Moses, nigh, he demands, nigh, he commands. That, after the 10 Commandments, keep reading. He tells you are to sacrifice your firstborn children. Everything that is new out of the matrix of the womb, the firstborn of women. The firstborn son of children. That is what is supposed to happen. It gives it in Sinai. So I wonder, is anybody lately worshiping this God at all? Even Jewish freakouts? Anybody sacrificing goats, cows? Have you heard of it in anywhere, place at all? Have you heard of anybody sacrificing their firstborn children that aren't a devil worshiper that's going to be put in jail for life? No, it's because all of this is bullshit and everybody knows it. Everybody knows most of the edicts given in the Old Testament are bad. The New Testament tries to fix it. Well, the New Testament is really just a bunch of bullshit that's written by the Greeks, just like the Bible before. You notice how the Bible is always the Greeks? It always contains the Greeks. The earliest Bible we have is Greek writings. Well, there's a real intelligent man who studied this, and he studied Josephus's writings right here. Joseph Atwill, or his name is Atwill. And he has written a book called The Caesar's Messiah. And there is the Flavian signature. And he shows you in here how there's 42 different places where Jesus' ministry exactly mimics Titus's ministry. And it's supposed to show you that just like Jesus said at the Mount of Olives when he was going to return in Armageddon, was to the apostles right in front of them during their lifetime. Not somebody reading the book 2,000 years later. He tells the apostles during their lifetime, a generation. Then he gives a parable of an olive tree. This is all meant to mean 40 years. It's a generation in the Bible, well known. The generation of Moses, 40 years in the desert, 40, it's what it is. Well, Jesus died in 33. What happens in 73, 40 years later? The end of the Jewish revolt caused by Titus, where he massacres and kills every single Jew, leaves no stone unturned. Just like Jesus says when he walks out and points at it and says that's what's going to happen. It's some big prophecy. It's no prophecy. It was written years later by these Greek and Roman scholars back about it. In fact, we know now the earliest Bible passages are written much, much later. And so whenever they go back and prophesize, it would be like me saying I found a book that was before Abraham Lincoln, and I'm telling you there's a guy named Lincoln. He's going to go to a theater named Ford's, and he's going to have his head shot off. And later, there'll be a man named Kennedy riding around in a Lincoln, and his successor is named Ford, and he'll get shot in the head. And you'll think I'm some kind of Nostradamus, but it was all written later. And a bunch of bullshit that has kept mankind trapped for over 2,000 years. And it is a bullshit. Very much so. Verily I say to you, he tells them repeatedly, verily I say to you that you will not die. And why does he tell them that they will not die? Because they are still supposed to be alive when that happens. And those apostles that are there are mentioned as doing so. Here's some info for you. Here's a black preacher who has finally lost it on how the black Negrocentric thing has happened, and he's going to tell his congregation what's up.
The most the black people have ever done is get it here in America on the white people's help. When they were in Africa, they didn't do nothing. Black people had Africa, that big old continent over there. They never built one boat that was seaworthy, not one. There's not one monument in Africa, in all of Africa. I know you're talking about Egypt. Egypt is not Africa. There are no great cities that were built. Even before the first colonization of white people coming to the shores of Africa or the slave ships, black men built nothing. No sewer system, no houses above one level, and none of them made out of stone, all of them made out of grass and wood.
Mud huts.
Black men, before the white man ever got to Africa. The worst thing that could ever happen to South Africa was when they gave it to Nelson Mandela and black folk. That was a great nation. Now, notwithstanding apartheid was wrong, we all know it's wrong. I'm against it. There should have been some other resolution, though, that turning it over to Nelson Mandela. Disease, AIDS, and crime is running wild in Johannesburg. They're killing one over there. They're dying of sickness. The government is mismanaged. The people who ran the nation are now leaving the nation because black folk don't know how to run no nation. They don't know how. And we need to admit it. I know you don't like it, but you need to stop shucking and jiving. We got a problem. Nigeria produces oil every year, yet the children over there are hungry and pot-bellied and walking barefoot. We got a problem. You talk about the Hutus and the Tutsis. Look what's going on in Zimbabwe now with Mugabe. We got a problem, black folk. And forget about Zimbabwe and South Africa, Nigeria. Look at what y'all are doing in Harlem. You can't even hold on to Harlem. What's wrong with you voting for Barack Obama? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all? You niggas are crazy. We got a problem. Black folk don't understand the world. You can get mad with me all you want. You can say what you want, but you can't prove me wrong. Now, I'm not saying this because I hate black folk. I'm saying it because I love you enough to tell the truth.